Hey everybody, it's Adam here, and I'm going to be reading uh, the Wings of Fire book again. Let's just jump right in. And I'm sorry if you hear anything in the background. My brother's crying, but it's not because of anything serious. He was in trouble and didn't get
Hey
on
everybody,
his game today.
it's
Oh shit! I forgot I had the
Adam here,
stream on.
and I'm
That was probably gonna sound bad. Fuck. Okay. Let's go. Okay. Starflight nearly jumped out of his scales. Glory felt her talons dig into the leafy dirt as she tried not to bolt into the jungle. The screams faded and she realized that all the rain wings were staring at her quizzically. Are you alright? Jambu asked. Wow, that's a spooked color. You weren't freaked like that by us. We clearly need to work on our scariness. I'm not spooked, Glory said, gritting her teeth and regaining control of her scale. I am, Starflight stammered. What was that noise? Oh, Liana said. That's the screamer monkeys. She pointed up and Glory spotted a large pair of brown monkeys lounging on a branch overhead. They started doing that a few years ago. It startled us at first too, Jambu said sympathetically. They used to make these deeper grunting noises, but now it's all shrieking and gibbering like dragons being murdered. You get used to it. Do you? Glory asked. On the one talon, that explained what the Mudwing patrols were hearing from the rainforest. On the other, it definitely did not explain the dead soldiers. And on the third talon, why would monkeys start making different noises than they had before? And on the fourth, why didn't the rainwings think that was weird? Come on back to our village, Jambu said. We could knock you out for the flight if you want. You might be more comfortable. There are a lot of branches in the way. No, thank you, Starflight said. Absolutely not, Glory said at the same time. Jambu shrugged. All right, then. Follow us. He leaped up gracefully into the air and spiraled up towards the treetops. The rest of the dragons did the same. It looked like a bit like a rainbow exploding, splattering color all over the trees. Glory and Starflight followed them into the canopy, high above the forest floor, where they were surrounded by sunlit emerald green and the whirring whisper of tiny wings. Birds darted and hopped all around them, as brightly colored as the rainwing. Whenever Glory paused for more than a moment, purple and gold butterflies landed on her talons or head. Perhaps they thought she was a flower. They stayed away from Starflight's darker scales. Dang, they racist. The rainwings moved the treetops with a weird grace, using their tails or spreading their wings to glide between the trees. It looked more like swimming in the air than flying. Glory wasn't sure she'd ever get the hang of it, but it made sense since straight flying between the densely packed trees would be difficult for creatures the size of dragons. Starflight kept smacking into vines as he tried to keep up with them. Lori wondered if he was wishing he'd accepted the offer to be knocked out in a net like the others. She saw Sunny's net soar past them, handed smoothly from talon to talon, from rainwing to rainwing. With a quick glance to make sure no one was watching her, Lori tried wrapping her tail around a branch and swinging in a full circle, like the other rainwings did. Almost there, Jambu said, landing beside her. His weight on the branch threw her off swing, and she ended up hanging upside down by her tail for an awkward moment. With a grin, he reached down and helped her haul her back upright. Her back talons gripped the rough bark of the branch. It felt like ancient dragon scales under her claws. You really aren't from around here, he said. No, Glory said. Starflight thudded down clumsily on the branch as well. My egg was stolen from the rainwings 6 years ago. Well, I can take you tree gliding any time you want to practice, he said. I bet you'll figure it out pretty quickly. He spread his wings and leaped off again. Glory frowned at his weird, departing pink tail. Yeah, that was weird, Starflight said, answering her unspoken thought. Wasn't it? As if he didn't care at all, Glory said. He didn't ask me who stole or where I was raised, or even act like he'd remembered being an egg remembered an egg getting stolen, as if eggs just vanish all the time. No big deal. She scratched her ruff thoroughly, thoughtfully. The, well, whatever. Maybe they do. Maybe there is a rainforest monster, and the dragons are used to losing eggs to it. That is really not comforting, Starflight said. He wrapped his black wings closer to himself, peering down at the forest floor as if he expected something toothly to re- to try and grab him. Comforting, Glory couldn't think of any particular comforting explanations for Jambu's lack of interest in her abduction. Perhaps he's just a weird dragon who doesn't pay any attention to dragonettes or eggs. Surely the rest of my tribe will care. Come on, let's keep up, she said to Starflight. A few swings and glides later, suddenly all the rain wings around them veered up, spiraling even higher into the tree top. Starflight made an anxious noise as the nets whooshed by her with her unconscious friends in them. And then the dragonette started to land, and Glory began to see the home of the rainwing. Oh, she breathed. She stopped to hover in the air so she could look at everything. The iridescent colors of the dragons brought by the hidden world forward. Otherwise, the dragons was as otherwise, the village was as camouflaged as any rainwing. Wide walkways shimmering with talon-sized orange orchards hung between leafy platforms. A few of the tree houses had low walls or woven ceilings. Others were open to the sky and carpeted with soft white flowers like falling clouds. Glory spotted a few of the sleepy gray sloths ambling or swinging between the walkways. She wondered if they weren't smart enough to know they were surrounded by dragons who could eat them at any moment. This is the coolest place I've ever seen, Glory thought triumphantly. And it's my place. Visitors! Lyanna called. She had a corner of Clay's nets in her claws. Carefully, she and the other ringwings lowered him onto a platform wide enough for 20 dragons. Glory swept up to land beside him, and watched her tribe gently set down her other friends. Dragon heads popped up all around the village. Glory realized that most of them were hanging in contraptions, like hammocks. She studied the closest one. It was strung between two trees, sturdily woven of vines and lined with violet feathers and blue petals. The dragon inside was impossible to see until he poked his head out. His scales matched the green and purple around him perfectly. Clever, Starflight said, tilting his head at the hammock. He glanced up at the ground miles below them and shivered. I certainly want to sleep this high without something like that. Look at that hammock design. You can't fall out. And with rainwing camouflage, enemies aren't likely to spot you either. Glory glanced down at her scales and saw a color rolling through them that she had never seen before. A vibrant blue-purple. She guessed that meant pride. She was proud of her tribe. She'd barely met them, and already they were as impressive as she hoped. So, there, Guardian, she thought, all those years of making me sleep in uncomfortable rock ledges in the dark. And who are the backward dragons exactly? I know. Isn't it pretty? We quite like our village too, Lyanna said, craftily in Glory's ear. Glory jumped back, flickering her tail. Alright, there was one thing that made her uncomfortable. The way the other rainwings looked at her as if they expected to understand every thought she had just by reading her scales. She clamped down on her emotions, turning her scales back to a tree-topped green that matched the black ground. Iona didn't seem ruffled by Glory's reaction. Rainwing scanned the leaves overhead and then smiled as 5 small dragons in the shade of sky blue and copper dropped through the canopy toward them. Hope you're hungry, Lyanna said as the dragons opened their talons. Strange shapes bounced and rolled across the platform, bumping against Glory's sleeping friends. Glory picked up the one closest to her, lime green and star-shaped. It smelled like pineapple and basil. She poked it with one claw, wondering if she had to feel it. Under the mountain, the dragonets had almost never eaten fruit. She knew more from reading about it in scrolls than from the few berries Webs had sometimes brought back. Queen Scarlet was the one who had given her pineapple. Don't think about Queen Scarlet. Starflight scanned the platform with a disappointed expression. Is all of this fruit? He asked. Isn't there any meat? Lyanna wrinkled her nose. You can hunt if you want, she said, but really, it's a waste of energy. She glanced up at the sky again. And it's almost our sun time, so if you must, then do it quickly. Sun time? Glory said. Oh, sweetheart, Liana said. Is that what's wrong with you? I was not aware that anything was wrong with me, Glory said, firmly keeping her scales from changing color. Not from a ringwing point of view, anyways. It's just your scales, Liana said. They're so mousy. Glory stared at her. Mousy? You know, Leanna said apologetically. A little dull, not like ours. She stretched out one wing and let a waterfall of rainbows ripple through it. Is she saying I'm not as beautiful as other rain wings? Certainly, they were all very bright and shiny. Maybe her own scales weren't quite as vibrant. Glory wasn't sure what to think of that. In fact, she was pretty sure she didn't care. She'd always been the pretty one, and it had never gotten her anywhere, other than chained to a decorative tree in the Skywing Palace. Well, it's 11 now, so we'll stop there for today. Our